Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, evening, depending on where you're at. And this is the Essential Credentials 2020 interview series. This is episode 11, second to last episode of the series, which is pretty exciting. A little bit of a surprise today, too, because normally we go Wednesday, Sunday, but I thought it would be great to have a couple of guests back to back today and tomorrow. So, when you look at collectors, sometimes you can describe them based upon maybe the player that they collect, and so I thought that it would be great to bring in a wily old veteran collector. I know he enjoyed that one, but he's been collecting for quite a long time, longer than most of us, and he also collects a player who played quite a long time. He's been on the show a couple of times, on the podcast a couple of times, but we're going to kind of go into more depth on his collecting journey and what it's been like for him this year. And so without further ado, would like to welcome Chuck to the podcast. How are you, buddy?
How you doing, Matt? Hello, everybody.
Merry Christmas to you, and thanks for coming on the day after Christmas. Sure appreciate that, although talking about cards is kind of like Christmas every day, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I had a bad day at work today, so I'm going to enjoy this podcast.
Perfect. Yeah, really excited to be able to make you a part of this interview series because it's all been about storytelling, and giving people food for thought. And I feel like every episode we've had, and I know you've been very kind to watch all of them up to this point. I feel like there's been something that every collector, whether a person like you who's been collecting for upwards to 40 years, or a person like Alan who's been collecting for baseball at least for like maybe a couple of years, there's something to learn. And you've been around quite a while collecting. I thought it would be great to hear some of your stories and give us a chance to maybe approach collecting from your perspective in a way, because you've been collecting the same player for quite a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, actually, probably close to 30 years,
Wow.
30, 35 years. I started out, with set collecting, buying sets each year,
Right.
and, a few wax. I've never been a real big wax box person, opening up boxes.
Right.
I know a lot of guys do that, and I know I have recently trying to find my holy grail, the 24 karat gold. But uh, you know, other than that, I kind of get disappointed when I spend a bunch of money on a box and really don't get anything out of that box. I'd rather just buy
Right.
a couple of cards and feel good about what I paid for.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's something even now that we're having to face as collectors, because the 90s boxes aren't even really affordable anymore either, because everybody's pricing them to be that, like, there's a chance there's a Griffey or Jeter in there of some, ridiculously rare insert. So I
Right.
think those times have kind of gone, like you said, and it's a good thing that you've, for the most part, been able to stay away from that. Um, you know, this year especially too, I mean, has that kind of solidified that for you? I mean, I know you've been able to open a couple of Brilliance boxes, which has been fun to see, but I mean, seeing the prices, has that kind of driven you away from that thought completely? Like, all right, no more boxes for a while.
Um, yes and no. I mean, I got a good deal on that last box that I broke,
Mm-hmm.
and probably the one before that too. My wife was kind enough to try and buy some boxes for me at the beginning of the year, and she paid quite a bit more than what I paid for the last two.
Right.
And I was lucky. When I pulled two or three 24 carats and two regular golds out of the
Yep.
boxes. I think I broke a total of 6 or 7 boxes.
Right.
So pretty good odds there, catching those cards. So I mean, I've seen one or two on recently, but again, I was like, do I want to spend 150 bucks or 175 bucks on a box, or do
Right.
I want to get two or three cards that I really like now and I'll be happy with?
Right.
So I kind of have gone that direction right now. But you know, if it becomes a point where that 24 karat kind of stretches out for a year, 2 years, 3 years, I might get that itch again and break a couple more boxes.
It is hard to take that out of us as collectors. We always love, getting a box and ripping open a pack, even if it's just cheap wax. So I don't blame you for hunting for it, especially because pulling a Cal Ripken 24 karat from a box yourself would be a card that would have just that much more sentiment to it. And it was pretty cool though, because one thing that I do want to give you a shout out for is you embody that collectors helping collectors mentality. And it was great because you pulled Tino Martinez, and a friend of ours, Christian, nice guy. He collects Tino, and he was so over the moon to get that card. And I think, if I'm correct, Bob Higginson was the other one that you pulled. Didn't you pull a Bobby Higginson 24
Yep,
carat at
I
your
did,
house?
and a Roy Halladay.
Roy Halladay. Now, who ended up getting the Roy Halladay from you? I don't remember who that was.
Uh, yeah, I'm drawing a blank right now. It was actually a brother. One of the brothers, the brother is in the group, and he
Hmm.
messaged me and said that his brother was interested in it, and we
Okay.
made the deal
Okay.
on eBay.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I'd have to say. Besides picking up your Cal Ripken cards, which we're going to talk about, that was pretty cool to watch you open those and have such good luck, because especially all of us in the community appreciate seeing people open wax. So, can you just touch on that real quick though, Chuck? I mean, you've been in the group in that one Facebook group for 2 years or so, right?
Yeah.
What's that experience been like for you overall, since you got into that group and started posting some cards and whatnot?
So I started that group in the beginning of 2018,
Okay.
and I was in. I think it was the big, huge group, the baseball card um, memorabilia group or whatever it was, the big, huge one,
Right.
card collectors or whatever. And then in the beginning, in February of 2018, I fell and broke my leg, and I was out of work for 2 months. So in the meantime, I was kind of surfing eBay and Facebook, and I kind of came across this group by accident, talking to one of the guys that's in the group now. I think it was Mike Wires,
Uh huh. Yeah.
and he uh, he invited me into the group, and that's when I started posting. I started posting a card a day,
Right.
and I think I did that for like 4 months straight.
You did. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was impressive.
yeah. And then after that, I just kind of got to be able to make all kinds of good friends here,
Hmm.
and start talking with you guys and messaging, and it's been an awesome experience. Um, I would have never been able to do it. I think if I didn't have the time on my hands at the beginning of the year, I probably would have found it eventually, but
Right.
it gave me a good foot in the door there to start and just kind of be sitting home and not really being able to do anything but, talk cards on Messenger and Facebook.
Right. Right. Well, and you do a good job too. You're always searching for stuff. So I'll get messages from you, and hey, do you have this yet? Do you have this? And that's what all the community's about, man. So I'm glad that you've been able to be a part of that for sure, and it's been really fun to kind of follow your collection over the last 3 years now.
Yep.
They all blend together, man. That's how it is as a teacher. They all just kind of blend together. So focusing on 2020 specifically, I mean, do you feel like it's been, as most of us feel, one of the most enjoyable years of collecting that you've had, or do you think it's up there?
Yeah, I mean, I think with everything that's happened, take into consideration the pandemic and everything, and the people that are dying out there, and we're grateful and thankful enough to be able to be sitting home and working and doing our thing and collecting cards, and while people are struggling to make a living.
Right.
So yeah, I feel fortunate that I've been able to do this and to continue doing this. And it's actually been one of my better years. Um, the last several, I would say, within the last 5 years, have probably been pretty good years, but this was one of my better years,
Well, I've got to
considering.
ask too. Being a Cal Ripken collector, we've had two of them on. First of all, we had Will, who you obviously know quite well, and also Andy, who you know quite well. And I'm just kind of curious your take on it too. I mean, you've been collecting Cal Ripken for much longer than they have. I mean, do you feel like this year there was even more of his stuff put out there? I mean, do you feel like it was kind of overwhelming, just the amount of cards, or did you have enough that you could still kind of target specific cards that you were looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
but we've had a couple of bigger Ripken guys sell off their collections this year.
Right.
So there have been a lot of cards hitting the market,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's been good and bad. Great for us for choices of what we want to pick through, but I wish I had a Brinks truck. I could back up the Brinks truck and buy everything they had. Um,
I hear you on
yeah,
that.
it's Barry selling off, and obviously Andy had to make that hard decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another Ripken collector named Carlos that is trying to retire in a couple years, and he's selling off a good chunk of his collection as well.
Wow. That's just a thought too. That obviously having Andy on, we don't have to go into that too deep. But I mean, that's really a tough choice to have to make. But it's sad to see fellow collectors end up selling out. But it is nice in our case where we're able to scoop some things up, and I know I've been a part of that a couple of times. So, but again, it's nice to kind of know the people that it's coming from. The cards are well taken care of, and that they're happy that they're helping you out. So it's a lot better than just finding some random person on eBay selling it all off. I guess that's just my take
Right.
on it. But so as far as this year, do you feel like when the pandemic hit, you were able to knock off a bunch of cards that were on that want list? Because I do have to say that you and me are up in that like upper echelon of Pacific fans, so I know that that's like an endless chase for those.
Yeah.
But do you feel like you were able, like in general, to cross off a few off the top 10 list this year?
Yeah. Obviously, I've got a pretty extensive list. Um, but yeah, I was able to. I was just looking through my purchase history actually yesterday, and
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I made some good purchases. I probably 50 cards, 60 cards this year,
Okay.
and I'm sure there's people that bought a lot more than that, but um, I got to watch the budget and try to prioritize what I want, and I'm pretty selective um, when it comes to what I'm looking for too. So,
Right.
uh, I have my PayPal account, I have my PayPal credit account. So I watch that, and I got a pretty extensive watch list. So
Nice.
I tend to just kind of put things on the watch list and wait and see what happens. And after a couple days, if nothing really strikes my fancy and there is something that I do like, I'll go ahead and buy it and just kind of keep a little bit money here and there in case
Right.
something pops up. So yeah, it's tough to prioritize what you want because there's just so much out there.
Yes.
And I mean, I have a pretty good collection. I've got over 5,000 cards, but I still have a lot of cards I need. I mean, Ripken's been around for 40 years, so that checklist is probably 25 to 30,000 cards
Mm-hmm.
and growing.
Yeah, because they keep putting him in all the modern stuff for sure. But
Yeah.
and to kind of differentiate from how I talked to Andy and Will, who were collecting for a little while, but not nearly as long as you. You've been collecting Cal Ripken for quite a long time, and I know when you were on the podcast, maybe a couple people that watch this will already know, but most won't. When did you make that decision to collect Cal Ripken, and what was like the first 10 years of that? Like, what was the market like for him in those years as compared to now?
So he was in Rochester in 1981 as a Red Wing.
Mm-hmm.
So I live in Rochester, New York, or upstate New York. So we're literally 15 minutes, 20 minutes from downtown Rochester. And we would go to the games. We go to Red Wings games every year. So when he was with the Red Wings in '81, um, got to see him play, and really liked the way he played. And he was a fan favorite even back then with the Red Wings. And the Orioles were their farm system. So they would have a game every year where they would come to town and play the Red Wings once a year for they did that for 15, 20 years. So we get to see them come to town once a year and things like that. But I would say so. He went to Baltimore in 81, 82. He started in 82.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the first couple years, I probably only collected them as sets because you're only dealing with, the basics, Tops, Fleer, Don Russ were the
Right.
only cards around except for oddball stuff.
Yep.
And that's the way I started collecting was just kind of sets back then. Um, didn't really make the jump to personally collect him only until I want to say probably 91, 92. I
Okay.
started focusing more on him,
Mm-hmm.
but I also collected rookie cards of any star player,
I
Frank
think a lot of
Thomas.
people collected that way in the early '90s, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, you read the baseball magazines and baseball card Beckett and
Yeah.
those things, and they suggested, oh yeah, collect the rookie cards and the second year cards and this and that, and so I did, and I got the Mattingly rookies and Strawberry and all those guys. I even went into basketball and football,
Mm.
collected all the big guys there, and I did that for a couple years. So I kind of did, you know, I know people are focusing now, they're branching off from their PC and going into a separate PC, a smaller one now, but I did it the other way and kind of did my PC first.
Interesting.
Um, and then I would say probably 97, 98, I stopped doing that and just kind of said, that really doesn't do anything for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoy Ripken, and I'm gonna focus my collection on Ripken, and so I ended up selling all that stuff off, and basically selling or trading it, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up trading it for a lot of Ripken cards.
Man, and that to decide to do that in like the late '90s, that's like the golden age of '90s collecting because that's when all the parallels and like the PMGs and the 24 carats and all that stuff, Crusades and all that started coming around. I think if I could wish for something as a '90s collector, hockey and baseball, would be to go back in time in a sense. And I think we even talked about this the first time you were on and just walk into those card shops when they were everywhere, like
Yeah,
4 or 5 a city and just go in there and look at all the 90s stuff in the case and whatnot. I mean,
yeah.
does anything stick out in your memory? This is for people who haven't listened to that interview with you, which was back in like episode 8 or something.
Hmm.
But you know, what was that atmosphere like in the peak of the '90s? I mean, when you went into the card shops, was that all the rave? Were the '90s inserts just everywhere?
Yeah, I mean back then even commons were pricey. You get a shit, whatever 97, 98 basic insert, and it would be listed for 10 or 15 bucks, $20 in the case, and even your commons were $4 or $5.
Right.
So yeah, we had I don't know 3 or 4 card shops around the area,
Okay.
and I would go to one a week, and then a different one the next week and see what they had. Obviously, this is all pre eBay days,
Right.
so it was harder back then to find the certain cards you wanted, but
Right.
there were plenty of card shops around. I mean, you just had to be willing to drive a little bit of distance too. I mean, we had there's a couple in the malls and a couple
Yep.
standalone shops. So I used to drive around town, take a day, and just kind of go to card shop and see what I could find. And you know, there were a decent number of people in the shops.
Mm-hmm.
There was one card shop I frequented quite a bit, and he had a lot of good stuff. I mean, I probably did the majority of my um, investing with him, and
Gotcha.
got a lot of good stuff. So we never had those collecting where you could trade with collectors or anything like that back then. I think that happened a little bit after I got away from the card shops, but
Right.
um, it was fun. I miss that part of collecting where you can actually go into the shops and touch the cards, feel the cards. Now you know, yeah, eBay's great. You can find stuff in Germany and Taiwan and all that stuff, but you
Yeah.
don't get to touch those cards. You have to go by pictures, and hopefully the description is accurate and you get what you're looking for.
That
So
is for sure. That is for sure. It's I was just kind of thinking to myself, just trying to like round out a collection back then would be almost a more enjoyable journey, because if you're trying to be a completionist and if you got a complete checklist of Cal Ripken from like 1990 to 1999 and you're trying to get all the base cards and whatnot and all the basic inserts, I mean, you'd have to like know what you're looking for and then look through all of that inventory as compared to just eBay searching.
yep,
And I think, collecting in the 90s as compared to now definitely has their pros and cons, but I'll agree with you. I think anybody watching would agree too. It's like the feeling of going into a card shop cannot be replicated. I don't care how awesome of an online resource you have. And I did get to share that with my dad right after the National, which was just a blast being able to go into a card shop and have that feeling again with the glass cases and other
yeah,
collectors coming in and trying to swing a deal here and there. And
yep.
I mean, it's definitely fun to think back on that. And I'm curious too. We talked about this prior to the interview today. Uh, are there any cards that have kind of taken off now that weren't kind of on the hot list back then, and then vice versa? What cards can you think of that people were just like, oh man, you got to get this insert, or you got to get this card. This is awesome. But nowadays, people are like, we don't really care about those anymore. Do you have any examples that you could share with us?
Yeah, actually, I do. Let's see. Let's start with the ones that were. Let's go with the ones that were kind of pricey back then that um, aren't really pricey now.
Okay.
So I know this is one of, I think, Will's favorites right here. Um,
Oh wow.
the Metal Universe card
Mm-hmm.
from '97.
That's the mother load, right?
Yes, the
Okay.
Motherlode. And that card actually back in the day, I believe I probably paid close to $120 for that card back then.
Wow. Right.
And I know it's still fairly popular now, but I know it's a lot less than that. It's probably more like $50,
Mm-hmm.
50, $60 now.
Okay.
So that's one that I don't regret it. Um, they were hard to come by. If you saw one in a card shop in a year or two, you were lucky. So that was one. And we've talked about this one before. This is the '97 Select Mirror Blue with Chipper Jones on the back.
And you have the price tag on it still. Look at
I
that.
do still have the price tag. Yes, $100.
Wow. That's what, a $20 card now?
Uh,
30?
Probably 30.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. That's something else, man. I'm really curious. Before you show the next one, Chuck, you talked about the mother load, right? And then the very popular insert from Metal Universe. But in order for, like nowadays, if a mother load shows up, it's probably been passed down from collection to collection, or somebody bought it and sold it. But back then, the only way a shop owner was going to get one is a guy had to open a box and then sell it back to the card shop owner, in which he would probably use to buy another box. So
Right.
it's no wonder those things are impossible to find in shops back then. You must have been pretty thrilled when you went into a shop and saw that sitting there, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that was actually so I got that at one of the shops that my wife and my other good friend we kind of frequented once we all first met back in '96.
Okay.
So that came out in '97. So it was late '97 that we found that, and both the ladies collected back then. So
Oh, nice.
um, One collected Alex Rodriguez, my wife,
That's a great choice.
and and my other friend Gay, she collected Atlanta Braves cards, and she likes Chipper Jones.
Oh wow! Did you guys have to get in a fight over that Cal Ripken chipper card right there?
No,
Okay,
no, no, we did not. I
that's
won.
good.
I won.
It's-
Bottom line,
he is on the quote unquote front of the card, so
yes,
there is that.
Cal is on the front. Yeah.
All right, what else do you got for us from back in the? This was really expensive back in the '90s.
So I got two cards, and they're the same type, but the Don Russ Diamond Kings canvas cards.
Mm,
Yeah, obviously we all know the first 500 are the canvas, and those were $120 back then, and I believe
jeez.
now they're probably in the neighborhood of 30,
Right.
maybe
You
40.
you sent me a link to the A Rod, and I just hadn't. I don't think I told you that I had grabbed it, but yeah, it was less than $10. But to think that a card out of 500 was worth over $100 back then, I think the Diamond Kings just had that name with it, whereas now that name really doesn't carry as much weight as a precious metal gem or essential credential carries. So
Yeah,
it's funny how that's different now.
yeah, they had a good following. I mean, they had a big enough following that they made a set out of the stuff. I think
Right.
it was what 2005, 2003, 4, and 5. They did a Diamond King set.
Right, with like 5 million different relics and
Yeah,
parallel relics.
exactly. Yep.
Unbelievable. Okay, cool. Well, man, that's that kind of stuff. I don't know about anybody watching right now, but those kind of cards. I was going through my A rods, and with magnetics being as expensive as they are, you have to like consolidate a little bit. Like, nah, I don't think that belongs to be in there. I was on the fence about a couple of those, like the mirror blue and the canvas. There was a couple of ultra inserts that was like, God, do I put them in a magnetic? And because back in the day, I mean, even the lower tier inserts that are $5 now were 30, 40, $50. You had to pay Beckett High for them
Yep.
because shop owners, they weren't going to cut you any slack because everybody would pay that. So
Right.
that's crazy to think. Well, how about the other side of it, Chuck? Like, what was a bit cheaper back then, but people are now paying more than they did in the '90s?
So this is one that's pretty popular now. Obviously, we know the refractor version's crazy, but this is the man out of 500, and it's back then it was pretty cheap. I mean, you could get this for $20 or $30, and now they're going for. I think the last one I saw sell for close to $60 or $70.
The non-refractor version? Wow,
Yeah,
that's
that kind of
impressive.
surprised me that it went that high. Maybe not quite 70, but it was up there pretty good. Kind of
Okay.
shocked me when I saw the price on that one.
Wow, yeah, that's you don't see them very much either, especially being out of 500. But then
Yeah,
again, the Diamond Kings canvas never show up either. So,
here's a favorite.
ooh,
Believe it or not, back in I want to say 2007 or 8 maybe.
hmm
Um, there was a Ripken guy that I met somehow. I think I was just talking on eBay. I saw something on eBay, I think, and then got talking with a guy off of eBay, and he was a uh, fellow collector that had decided to sell off back then, and I got that card for $50.
oh wow,
Actually, I got
wow,
so I spent $500 on a PSA 10. What was it? A PSA 10. Give me a second to think. Oh, a 95 Topps Finest refractor.
okay,
PSA 10.
hmm
Got that for $50.
wow,
I got a 98 5-star select bonus out of 50 for $50. I got a couple other cards. I bought like 8 cards for a total of like $500
Okay.
from the guy.
Wow.
I could not find that Topps finest refractor. I was looking for it forever. Never would show up on eBay. And the guy had a PSA 10, and I'm not a big graded person.
Right.
I'll only buy graded if I have to because I can't find it ungraded.
Correct. Yep.
So I got the PSA 10, and then probably maybe a year later, the ungraded ones started kind of hitting eBay a little bit more often, and a few of them popped up. So I was able to pick an ungraded one up for probably $50 or less. I sold the PSA 10 for 500.
That's pretty impressive. That's, but I
Yeah,
mean, sometimes as collectors, even though it's hard to do it, you have to kind of take advantage of that market when it presents itself. But I guess my question for you before we move on to the next topic here is, what do you like looking at the Mystique established or a card out of 50 being so cheap? What was the reason for them just not being in such high demand back then? I mean, it just seems like those would still be really expensive even in the 90s, which I guess some of the big cards, like a platinum gold out of 30 sure is going to carry some big value no matter when, but those kind of cards just seem to not have much of a following back in the 90s. I mean, yeah, you'd pay $100 for them, but you know, I think they seem to be a lot more popular now. Any idea why that was? Was there just a bigger focus on other things, you think?
I don't know. I do. Maybe it's just because people didn't know much about the cards or didn't realize how rare they were and how hard they were to pull. I know. So I'll tell you a little story about the '98 Bowman's Best atomic refractors out of
Right.
25. I uh, I remember seeing one on eBay probably like 10 years ago, and it was for like $50.
That's the dual sided ones you're talking about, right?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. The mirror fusion atomic
Yeah.
refractors. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Got it.
So I think Ryan Miner is on the back of the Ripken card.
Right. That's correct. I remember that now. Yep.
Biggest,
Okay.
one of the biggest Oriole busts ever.
Ever. Yep.
But anyway, so I saw that atomic refractor on eBay, and back then it didn't do anything for me. I I I kicked myself because I passed over it for like $50,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up paying an arm and a leg for it when I did acquire it back about 5 years ago.
Right.
So I just don't know if either the sellers, obviously the seller that I bought that stuff from either had to dump the stuff because he needed the money or he didn't know exactly what he had. Because
Right.
those 3 cards alone, the PSA 10, the established, and the 5-star select, that was probably $600 or $700 worth of cards right there back then, even.
Mm.
And I got everything for 5, and I got like 4 other cards that I can't remember exactly what they were now, but
Right.
um, actually, I think one of them was the '98 upper deck clearly dominant out of
Oh.
250.
Yep.
You know, I got that as well.
And it's sure interesting to see what knowledge will do. I mean, obviously the basketball market sure brought a lot of knowledge to people on and desire for those 90s inserts, I think, all around, no matter what sport you collect. But I mean, you've noticed it in the group the last 3 years. I mean, the amount of knowledge that everyone has and spreads and gives to everyone. I mean, when a card pops up, if you were to say, "Can somebody help me with this card?" and like post a picture in the group, you'd have 30 of us saying, "Oh, yep, yeah, this is
Yep.
worth this," and
Oh yeah.
that's just, I think, with all the social media, man, the exposure of the 90s and the amount of knowledge out there that's been put out there, it's far surpasses where it's ever been. And so I guess with that comes a much higher desire for those cards. And I mean, geez, we got a podcast named after it, for crying out loud, for a
Right.
90s insert. So I
Right.
think it's come a long way. But Yeah, that's just I just enjoy hearing those stories, of the then versus now, and um, yeah, just how hard it was to find those cards as compared to now too, in a sense. Because if you really dig hard enough, you can find almost any tough card you're looking for, except from the brand that I want to talk about for a few minutes here, and that's of course Pacific. I mean,
Mhm.
you and I both love the brand. I know Tyler's a huge fan of Pacific. What is it about that brand that's always stuck out to you? I mean, I assume you've been collecting his Pacific cards since back in the late '90s, right?
Yeah, and those are again, those are some of the ones that have been, it goes both ways. They were pricier back then and cheaper now, or they were a little bit cheaper then and pricier now. So it depends on exactly what you're looking for. But I think the creativity that the company had with the
Mm-hmm.
die cuts and the different layering of the cards, um, and then the serial numbering. I think they got crazy with the serial numbering, but in a way, it's kind of fun to chase it,
Right.
and you know, it it's the modern day rainbows in a sense. Um, but then there's some cards that aren't numbered, so that kind of goes the other way and drives me crazy. Like if they're going to number some cards, why don't they just number them all? You know, like some of the platinum blues are numbered and some of them aren't. It's like I'm colorblind. I can't tell the difference between some of those cards.
That's funny. I don't know, man. That's what's so crazy about Pacific. I mean, anybody that collects, '90s, you probably when you first got in, like for me, I know I passed up on some really cool A rods. I'm sure because I was like, what is going on with this brand? Like I just didn't know. And there's just so much to dissect with everything they were doing, and half of what they did makes no sense. It really doesn't. But that's the the appeal of those cards. Like I gotta ask you, like when you go into a card shop in the '90s and there's all the boxes sitting out there, was Pacific kind of like the brand that nobody really touched? Did people just kind of leave those boxes alone back then?
Yeah, I mean they weren't very expensive packs. I think they were, $3, $4, $5 at the most.
Right.
And yeah, your other packs, your Bowman Chrome and your Bowman Best and things like that were $7, $8 a pack, and they just weren't desirable for some reason. I don't know why. Um, I guess it's good for the collectors that like the Pacific brand because you could try to get deals.
Right.
The dealers would be sitting on the stuff and have to get rid of it, so they cut you a little bit of a break. You know,
Right.
get a few packs for free or knock off $15 off a box or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Man, that's
I've
wild.
always liked the brand. Just something about it. I can't really put my finger on it completely, but it's kind of like it's just a big chase.
Right.
I like the chase of everything too.
Mm-hmm.
Like 40,000 cards to chase. I know I'm never going to get them all. I might as well get the easier ones I can get, not the one-on-ones.
Right. Yeah, they offer a lot of white whale cards, don't they? That you will be lucky if you see one for sale in 10 years. I mean, it's just,
Yeah,
you know, it's just kind of crazy to think. I mean, Nate's got a point there. Obviously, that was the one insert that carried a lot of weight, and those wouldn't you say that those, in a sense, minus like the numbered versions from '98, those have certainly fallen off a bit as compared to where they were then. I mean, you can even get a Griffey, like a base Griffey, which were one out of 720 packs. You can get that for an affordable price still. It's just
yeah.
makes no sense. And then a Pacific or Pinnacle Skylines is one out of 40 packs or something, and those sell for like a ridiculous amount. Again, makes no sense. So as far as Pacific goes, I mean, this is just I'm going to throw a random question at you that's not on here. But if you could ask if Mike Kramer somehow got on this podcast, which I mean it's a dream, it'll never happen. But if I were to have Mike Kramer on here and you could ask him something about his philosophy and his design with Pacific, what do you think it would be? What would be something you'd be like, I gotta know this?
Um, well, something I just, believe it or not, something I just found out was I believe it's the 98 version of the Kramer's Choice. I always thought that everything was oversized. And that's one thing I do not like is oversized cards.
Mm-hmm.
They're hard to put in the cases, they're hard to store and things like that. So I know you know this, I've never been a huge fan of Kramer's Choice.
Mm-hmm.
But I did find out that the 98s, a lot of those are smaller size, standard size cards. So now I've added that to my list of cards that I'm going to try to find. But the bigger ones I won't go after. So I think I would ask them, why do you have to do the oversized stuff? Keep everything simple, keep it standard, make it easy for our collecting groups to store the stuff and be able. I mean, how do you tell these things are they box toppers?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? They're not in packs because the packs aren't going to be 5x7s.
yeah, they were all in Crown in '98. Crown and Royale, they they made them box toppers. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would just want to know like why everything was different every year. Maybe that was a philosophy to not do the same thing twice because they would, in a sense, they would have the same inserts from the same,
Right.
But then at the same time, they'd put Kramer's Choice and Crown, not Crown Royale, and then Crown Collection. They'd be the next one, and then the next time they were always switching things up but I think it would be most interesting to find out about where the idea for like the rainbows came from, because they were the first to do it, and I think, and as you said, we both really enjoy. I know a lot of us '90s collectors enjoy that chase because there's always something to look for when you're looking for cards from the '90s for your player. Just look at Pacific.
And it's funny because some of those rainbows can be as simple as a 3 card or 4 card rainbow, and then there's other ones that are like 20 cards.
Right.
So it's kind of frustrating when I guess if you don't like maybe you don't like a certain design and you're not going to go after that particular design, but there's I don't even know. There's like 3 solid years of them, and you've got the Crown, you got the Royale, you got the Omegas, you got the Paramounts, and then you got the rainbows within each brand of those. So yeah, it gets a little mind-boggling after a while, but it's also fun to chase all that stuff. So, but the serial numbering, I think we talked about this before. Is if you're going to do a premiere date or something, one year make it 52. Why the next year is it out of 69? Just keep them the same every year. You insert them at the same odds. Keep them the same serial numbers.
Yeah. That was something that I just could not wrap my head around. And yeah, and then why are the blues numbered, not numbered? A lot of fun questions I would have for Mike Kramer, but again, I think that brand just has so much to offer for any '90s collector, and I try to promote that brand as much as I can on this channel because it is quite enjoyable, and they did a lot of unique things. I know Nate promotes them on his channel a lot too, and
thanks for driving up the prices, Matt.
I know I'm the worst. Good thing we didn't do our top 45 or top 50 Pacific inserts or designs or something. We were about to do that, but didn't quite materialize yet.
Yeah.
We'll do that when the season starts back up again. That'll be a fun thing.
Yeah.
So after 30 years of collecting Cal Ripken Jr. and primarily since the late '90s, do you still have plenty of cards on the want list? I mean, more than people might guess. I mean, that's what I mean by overwhelming. I mean, how are you able to narrow your focus? I mean, are you primarily like '90s only, and that helps you narrow down what you're looking for, or do you just kind of depends on what mood you're in type thing?
Yeah, I mean, I do a little bit of modern, but it's mostly '90s and early 2000s. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I still need, believe it or not. I mean, I've got a ton of base cards, and for the first geez, for the first 10 to 15 years, I didn't really have a lot of rare stuff. Only within the last 10 years have I been able to accumulate the more rare cards. So,
Right.
you know, a card number to 2,000 or a card number to 200 or something was about the extent of my, rarity back then in the early days. And, they were pricey then to some degree.
Right.
So, I got a good amount of base. I got a ton of inserts, and I've focused on cards that are numbered mostly 500 and under. But I do have obviously the ones that are numbered to a few of the 10,000s and 5,000s, and then work your way down to the 500 and less. But I've got them kind of separated in boxes by serial number, and then the
Right.
base cards are in another box and things like that. So,
Well, one of my last questions for you before we get to the rapid fire. I mean, I'm just so curious, and I think other people will probably be too. After collecting for 30 years, one player, how on earth are you able to stay completely focused? Because you know me, Ricky and Keel, now goalies, which has been just amazing and so much fun. But how are you able to stay on collecting one player? I mean, is it because there's just so much of him out there, or is there other reasons behind it?
well, I mean, I'm a huge fan, so I just can't see myself um, going after somebody else and spending the money to accumulate another. I mean, I did in a way. I mean, I collected Ripken, and in football, I'm a big Emmett Smith fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I collected Emmett Smith for quite a few years, and I was doing both of them. And then I was like, all right, I can't do both because it's way too much money to try to do both. So I went with the number one at heart and kind of focused on Cal strictly. Sold off a lot of the Emmett. I still have some, but trying to get rid of that. So yeah, it's hard. As far as modern cards, there's some cards that I do like. There's a couple I'm looking for now, um, but it really has to catch my eye in order to be a modern card and buy it. I probably only have, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred of modern. Anything
Okay.
after maybe 2000, let's see, 2020. I would say after 2010 to 2020, I might only have 200 or 300 cards,
Okay.
if that.
Well, I just like that you say that too. Like you're such a big fan. Like you can't imagine spending your budget, your card money on anybody else. It's definitely something I had to consider. But for a guy like me who collects 4.5 years of one player on a team, it's much easier to say, okay, that collection is kind of to bed for the most part, and focus on other endeavors. But yeah, I think anybody, especially anybody that listens to this that wants to collect Cal, if they come in, they need to know that there's going to be a lot out there, and it's easy to stay focused on one player when there's just so many different cards of you to find, especially if like you come in and you just get modern. Like if you for the last 10 years, he's got a lot of cool stuff out there. I mean, I remember his top Sterling stuff from like the late 2008, 9,
Yep.
10. I mean, that stuff is awesome. I used to
Yeah.
watch breaks on YouTube of people pulling in his Sterling cards. I'm like, oh man, can you imagine? That's such a cool looking card.
Yeah.
But so he's got a lot for both sides. It must be kind of cool to know that you can kind of divert in the modern range if you really want to.
And, that's the great thing about it. In having so many cards, there's so many different avenues you can go. You can go modern, you can go autographs. I know guys that just collect autographs. Um, you can go just inserts or just numbered stuff. There's all kinds of different ways to go, and I don't buy a ton of autographs. I have probably less than 40. And as far as jersey and patch cards, they really have to be nice cards for me to buy those. So I probably only have 100 or less jersey and patch cards out of everything as well. So,
Right.
um, unfortunately, the good cards like that are a little bit more expensive. So, it's just stuff that catches my eye. So I think one of the nice things about some of these guys selling off their collections is I'm able to find some of that stuff a little bit cheaper than I normally would,
Mm-hmm.
because they're looking out for their fellow collector. They're looking for the fellow Ripken guys, and before they put it on eBay or before they go to a dealer, they're asking, "Hey, Will, hey Chuck, hey Andy, you guys want this?" And like I said earlier, I wish I had a Brinks truck full of cash where I could buy a lot of that stuff. It's a opportunity that doesn't come around very often.
That is true. That is true. Well, I am gonna. I really hope that I'll never have to do that, or any of us are in the situation where we have to see our cards leave. But the one like little silver lining would be knowing it's going to somebody who's just as passionate as you are, to collecting. But yeah, I like that you mentioned that too, Chuck. It's nice that there's so many different avenues to go with a player like Ripken or McGuire or Bonds or Greg Maddux. I mean, there's a lot of these players that have a lot of modern stuff still,
Yeah.
and it's quite nice that they're giving them a lot of recognition still. Well, I guess the last thing I want to ask you before we get to rapid fire is, looking forward to 2021. What are a couple goals that you have set? I mean, are you going to approach 2021 like you have every other year, or are you saying, okay, I'm going to take this avenue and really dial in on that?
No, pretty much the same. When I can build up the bank account, keep it where I can buy a few cards here and there, and buy the stuff that I need as fillers and the stuff I really want. I mean, I probably got about 5 or 6 cards that are on the top of my list that I'm hoping that I could find this year or next.
Right.
Obviously, the 24 carats, one of them. That Pacific Wild vinyl,
Oh,
number to 10. I'd love to get my hands on one of those. So there's a few rarer cards that I'll keep my eye open for, and kind of sucks because I tend to save my money in case something big like that pops up.
right.
So I don't buy some of the stuff that I still need and want, but would take away from the possibility of getting that. So I'm I'm become selective in what I'm trying to buy.
There's nothing wrong with that at all. And I've been given that advice before too. And I don't know, it is nice to have kind of a steady flow of a couple cards to look forward to all the time. But something that's, I think, come to light that we've talked about is this is a year to sit back and like, especially at the end of this year, and reflect and enjoy everything you do have. Because, like you said at the beginning of this interview, there's a lot of people that are having trouble making ends meet, and here we are with a bunch of cardboard of players
Right.
that,
Spending,
yeah,
hundreds and hundreds of dollars on it. Yeah.
exactly,
Yep.
exactly. And we're quite fortunate in that regard. But I mean, for you too, it's got to be so cool to look at 30 years of collecting a player, and then when you're looking, I mean, can you still? This is just a random question. Can you still, if I were to say, okay, Chuck, close your eyes. I'm going to pick a card and I'm going to hand it to you. Could you tell me where it came from, most likely, and how much it was?
Probably for the most part.
That's pretty good. Keeps the memory fresh, right?
Yeah, I'm not a big spreadsheet guy or anything like that. I have no rhyme or reason to a checklist or anything like that. So believe it or not, I have been lucky enough, knock on wood, I haven't bought a ton of doubles that I already have. So if I put a card on a watch list and I'm like, oh, do I have that? I'll put it on the watch list and then I'll go searching through the boxes and see that, oh, I do have it or I don't. And
Right.
okay, good. For the most part, I can tell you whether I have it or don't.
That's. I know there's somebody that's watching right now, and I'll let him comment in the chat that does the exact same thing as you do. He's got a massive amount of cards, and somebody say, "Hey, can you find that Bonds card?" and be like, "Yep, right there," and that's pretty impressive. I mean, you guys, you wily veterans, have been doing it for so long. It'd be hard to like ask you to sit down and put every one of those in a spreadsheet or go on to trading card database. That took me a long time to put all the A-Rods in. I want to say 3 or 4 nights after work, just staying up till 11 o'clock, putting them in. It was a daunting task, but
Yeah.
it's the way to go because I didn't approach it that way at first with my Young Guns goalie collection, and I think I must have had 20 something doubles, maybe more, buying in lots. Like, oh, I need
Hmm.
that. It's like, oh wait, no, I need a guy off the other team.
Right.
So it's definitely good to know what you have and what you don't have. But I'd say
Yep.
again, knowing some of the cards you've picked up, man, it has been just an amazing year, and I think people would love to see some of the cards that you've been able to obtain, especially thinking, okay, this guy's been collecting for 30 years. What cards did he not have already still? But can we see your top 3 pickups from the year?
Sure. So the top three, the third one is a tie between um, the 93 Finest Refractor.
I can't believe you did not have one of those. That's
Yeah,
amazing to me.
I'm kicking myself over that because for years and years and years, I obviously wanted one and watched it, and I can't remember. I think they were $400 back in the early and mid '90s,
Right.
and actually when they first came out in '93, they were probably $500, $600. They
Jeez.
dropped a little bit, and they probably been $400 steady for quite a few years, and I thought, yeah, it's too much money, too much money, and I ended up probably paying double that.
Yeah. Whoops. I did the same thing with the PMG that I wish to God I had right now. So I hear you.
And then the card that it's tied with is one thanks to you,
Hey.
you and Andy.
Yeah. Nice.
The Upper Deck Forte Purple out of 10. You messaged me on that when it hit eBay,
Mhm.
and I probably would have found it that night. You just got on before I did and let me know about it, and I was able to make the guy an offer, and he turned it down. And I talked to you a little bit about it, and I was like, I really don't want to go any more than this. And finally, I decided, well, it's out of 10. I'm going to take one last shot at it. Gave him another offer, and he accepted it. So
Nice.
I was happy about that.
Well, coming from a guy who had the pleasure at the National of finding an A-Rod out of 10 from Upper Deck, I'm like, everybody was telling me, Rodney, Greg, Alan, like, you're never going to see this card again, probably. So you better get it. And I'm glad that you did. That's a toughie, man. I don't know how you're going to top that, but you're about to.
Number two is Bowman Chrome Golden Anniversary Refractor out of 5, Gem 95. Um, Again, that is actually both of these, this one and the next one, are um, with a little help from Rodney. Um, the collector that I bought them from, I bought both of them from the same guy, and I've done business with him in the past. I think I bought my '98 Red Crusade and one of my 97s, the platinum gold pinnacle
Right.
certified. I think it's not, yeah, 97. I bought one of those from him as well.
Okay.
A few years back, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I reached out to the guy through email, and I told him I was interested in any rare Ripken cards he might have. And he messaged me back and said he had like 3 or 4 of them and told me what he had. And one of them was a 98 uh, credentials now out of 11,
Wow.
but it was a PSA 10.
Mm.
So I knew that was out of my range.
Right.
Um, so I went with these two cards, the 98 golden anniversary, and I sent him an email and talked to him a little bit about it. Told him, hey, look, I'm not going to be able to pay right away. I need to do a payment plan. Can you work with me? And I kind of messaged Rodney and asked him, can you put in a good word for me? Do you know this guy pretty well? And he
Right.
kind of talked to him a little bit and, gave me a good review.
Good.
Um, and we were able to work out a deal. And over the next probably 6 months, I was able to acquire both of the cards
And you're talking about the next one you're going to show us here too, right?
as well. Yes.
And now this, can you give us just like a 30-second background? I mean, what made this your biggest card that you wanted for a long time? Because I remember how excited you were about this when you got it in finally.
And it's kind of one of those untouchables.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a few collectors out there that don't have this card of their player. And, these boxes, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier when you're buying wax boxes, just because there's a possibility of pulling a Griffey or a Jeter, they're selling for, the boxes are selling for $5,000 a box.
Right.
So this is, one that is on the top of a lot of people's lists, and it's just a gorgeous card. And it makes me sick to go back and look at PWCC and see that, back in 2003 or 4 or 5, you could have had the card for a fifth of what I paid for it.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
without any further ado, the 96 certified gold, mirror gold.
Awesome.
So, that was probably a tie with the 24 karat gold as far as my top wants. So I got one of them done. I'm just hoping that the other one pops up here soon. And, my wife has anything to say about it, she'll go right out and buy it for me. So I'm hoping that she does.
You've done a good job convincing her. I don't know what you've done, but that's awesome, man. Well, I know. I think once you get the 24K, like everything else beyond that's gravy. Just because that's definitely like the mountaintop card for you for sure. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm so glad that you were able to get those,
Yeah.
especially because how much we talked about those cards. So, how about your biggest steal of 2020?
Biggest steal of 2020 is an unreleased Pinnacle team bankruptcy card. Now there's two of these. I had the one. I did not have this one. And there was one on eBay. I want to say the guy had it listed for, I don't know, like $199, $179.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no way. No way. I know I got the other one for a lot less than that. So I was patient and waited. And I think he sent me an offer. Let's see. It's $199. I think he sent me an offer knocked off like $20. And I was like, no, still not going to do it. So I waited and I waited. And he had that listed for quite a while. And then all of a sudden, one night, and I do a Ripken search just about every night for newly listed cards.
Mm-hmm.
And just go through anything that's been listed within the last 24 hours since I was on the night before and see what pops up. And this card popped up from a collector well, I don't know if it was a collector. It might have been a shop, but I believe it was in New York,
Okay.
down toward New York City. And I got that card for $40.
Wow. Wow, that's awesome, man. That
So
is awesome.
a third of what the guy wanted for it.
Still,
And that's
there's
about
still,
what I paid for the other one too. Because
right.
I knew I got the other one. I think I paid 35 or 40 for the other one, so I
Mm.
figured somewhere around $50 is probably good.
Right, you're talking about the Team Pinnacle Club. They released those sets. Yeah, the A
Yep.
Rod was not too hard to find, thankfully. But I don't know if A Rod's got another one. I would assume he does, but that would be fun to see. How about the most unexpected card in your collection from 2020? What card would you not? I mean, were you just shocked that you were able? I mean, other than the Mirror Gold, obviously that's got to be one that you never expected. But anything else make that cut?
Yeah. So this is thanks to Andy Burkett. Um,
Oh wow.
the Pinnacle Swing for the Fences promo. This kind of fell into my lap, and I didn't know it. I didn't really know it existed for a few years. I just found out about it probably within the last couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, I just found out. And since I bought that, I found out there's a more rare version of they're. I believe they're blue. I'm not exactly sure what they're called though. Somebody showed me a picture of a Griffey
Mm-hmm.
and said they're like one's popped up in the last 5 or 6 years or 7 years or something like that. So
Right.
um, yeah, so I believe Ripken has one of those too, but I don't think I've ever seen one.
Yeah,
But I can't think of what
that
they're
would be
called.
cool to see. I don't even think I've seen. I know I've seen the A Rod like that, but I haven't seen the blue one. But the amount of stuff that came out of that vault from Pinnacle when they sold everything, what a shame that we didn't know what we do now, because we would have just all gone and gone
Right.
after been able to get our guys, and that would have been that. I mean, not that there has been many this year. I'd say for a lot of us, 2020 has just been the greatest year, not just for collecting, but for community and getting to know new people and connecting with collectors. Is there anything that stands out as like just a small disappointment, something that you're bummed about from this year, other than not pulling a 24 karat out of those boxes?
Yeah, I mean the thing that kind of bums me the most, I've touched on it a little bit here in the past part of this interview, is the fact
Right.
that for whatever reason, um, there's three Ripken collectors that have had to sell off their collections. Both, um, you know, I we know one has to because he wants to retire. Another one, you know, I don't know why. It makes it upsets me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it's good for me to be able to acquire some of those cards. But these are guys that I've talked to for the last, 5, 6 years in the Ripken group.
Mm-hmm.
And to see them selling off now. And then before that, there was another big super collector that actually put a website together, which is really kind of cool.
It is an awesome website. I have
Have you
seen
seen
it.
it?
Yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's quite nice.
I don't even want to know how much time it took him to put that together.
Oh, lots.
Yeah.
A lot.
More time than I want to commit.
I
But
agree.
I use that site to look at cards and things like that. But I also use an old Beckett baseball card plus, which has pack odds and things like that
Right.
in them.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a really old one, and I go by that as far as print runs, pack odds, and it has a lot of in-depth information about the sets. Um, and it does have a lot of stuff in there as opposed to a regular Beckett magazine. So
Right.
um, I use that in the Ripken site. So I would say that would be my biggest disappointment, is that the fact that the guys are selling off, and
Right.
Will and myself and Andy's kind of starting over a little bit, but there's a few other guys, but they're not in the '90s group. They're just in the Ripken group, and they don't
Right.
participate in this as much. So I'm getting lonely. Getting lonely. I need some friendship over here. So let's get
Well,
some new collectors over here.
some new Ripken. Well, hey, careful what you wish for, because as I've said before,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
it takes one more guy to be
Yep.
big on 90s, and your prices are going up, up, up. And it's too bad. I tried to get Bo on here at last minute, but he's got some stuff going on this Christmas time. But he got on an A-Rod kick there for like 3 months, and my wallet suffered because of him. But that's just the nature of the beast, you know.
Right.
I think
Right.
it's a love hate relationship with when another collector comes in, but
Yeah.
he's such a nice guy. I mean, I and he's super generous. So those are the type of people you want coming into collecting. If you could, I'm going to pose it to you the way that I asked Tyler this because I loved how I curveballed him. I threw him a glass now curveball when I threw him this question. But
Uh-oh.
yeah, you've heard this because you've watched the interviews. If you had a friend or somebody come over, Chuck, that really hasn't collected before, but you wanted to show them your Ripken collection, how would you summarize what they were going to see when they looked at it?
Unfortunately, unorganized.
Nice.
Um, I I have a good idea of where most stuff is. Like if you asked me to find something, I could probably find it within a couple of minutes, not within 30 seconds. Um, but like I said, I have most of my serial numbered stuff is in certain boxes, and then my base cards and things like that are in another big, huge box.
Right.
And then serial numbered cards from anything over 1,000 to 5,000 are in another box and things like that. So I can pretty much narrow it down. So, but it is unorganized, and
Gotcha.
some of these guys, they're like Will, his his room with the safe and everything is beautiful.
Right.
You know, some of these other guys that have their man caves, I'm envious of their man caves. So I got to work at that. So
I,
I got a room in the front of the house, and I got cards all over the floor. I got boxes on tables all over the place. But I got my Ripken stuff labeled.
well, then you've at least started. You've at least started. That could be worse. It could be worse. I mean, maybe we'll have to ask your wife how she would summarize it. Maybe she'd use the same word, but
She'd say a bomb went off.
abominable. I see your kid at heart still, just like you said.
Yep.
Out of all the cards in your collection, is there a card or anything that would be your most sentimental piece in that collection?
Yeah. So it doesn't pertain to the range of cards that we're collecting, but this is the 1981 Red Wing autograph. It's the TCMA card. And so that card was one that, at the time, my wife, we were just dating. We had just met that year. So we met in 96, the middle of 96, May or June of 96. And then that December for Christmas, she found that card for me, knowing how much that I really, really enjoyed collecting Ripken and loved Ripken and did not have that card. She tracked it down for me
Awesome.
and gave it to me for Christmas.
Perfect timing too. Christmas is
So,
day after Christmas episode. That's great.
and yeah, so I knew right then and there she was a dead keeper.
Did you go buy the ring the next day? That's what I want to know.
No, I didn't do that,
Okay, all right.
but I knew in my heart.
That's awesome. I mean, I think some of us, I mean, that's a dilemma that we've talked about with other collectors. I know Tanner Jones has written about it in his book. It's like trying to like find somebody who at least is a somewhat of a serial hobbyist with you, or at least has an appreciation, of the collection. It's different. All the significant others that have been talked about on this series, I don't think any of them have done what your wife did, or then girlfriend did. So, yeah, that's awesome. She's a keeper. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
She is a
she
keeper.
she could care less about the whole collection in general, but there's certain cards, like if I get a mail day, I'll show her everything I get, and she's like, "Oh, I really like that. I really like that." And I
Right.
think when we did our top 30 videos, I rearranged everything. I put mine in the order that I did the video in, and I had her range them in the order that she liked them, and then my really good friend Gay, she did the same thing for me. We kind of all arranged them, and
That's
they were
fun.
all different.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their different likes that catches their eye and things like that. Just because it's um, sparkly and colorful doesn't mean that it's the best looking. Even though shiny is pretty good for most of us.
I was gonna say that's probably like the one common thread between the three different stacks that you got going is that the shiny cards were at the front. I think that's what but the '90s, man, it has so much variation to offer collectors. I mean, it's no wonder the popularity of it's higher than it's ever been. I mean, if you like hunting rainbows, you can do that. If you like shiny cards, if you like a shiny rainbow card, you can find that. I
Yep.
mean, there's everything. So that's cool. That would be a fun video series to do someday. Is like to have everybody's significant others like do their top 25 in your collection and then see how it compared to the one that you did before.
Right. It
That
would
would
be
be kind of
interesting
fun.
for sure.
Yeah, someday. That'll be the next series I do when I start doing this, working on this channel again. That'll be fun. Okay, almost to the end here. Right now, what still excites you after 30 years of collecting calorie pin? What is still something that excites you about the hobby?
Couple things. Number one, the fact that I still need so much out there that I still need. Um, and then also, it's kind of in a way, I curse at it because it's like every year, I'm like, why don't they just stop making Ripken cards? He's retired. 2001, he retired. It's 2020. He's got more cards now than he's been since he was in his playing days.
Right.
So I would have to say, that I wish, I'm jokingly saying this. I wish they would stop making his cards so I can catch up,
Right.
but I'm never going to catch up.
Well,
I pretty much figured out, obviously all the 101s that are out there, those are, you know, if you're lucky to grab a few of them, you're going to grab a few of them, but there's no way that you're going to get um, a good stack of them. I mean,
right.
I know there's a lot of guys that have quite a few 101s. I don't own one single 101.
I don't think I don't know one of Alex Rodriguez either. And those are very tough, even for modern, because he's got some modern Mariner stuff. They're hard to go by. They're hard to come by, and they sell for the same amount that you'd buy a really nice '90s insert for. So it's kind of
Yep.
like, well, okay, I have to let that go. And
Right.
yeah, okay, I dig those answers. And I guess would that be the thing that you would change about the hobby too? Is like no more Ripken cards, or was there something else that you came up with?
No, the one thing I think I would change about the hobby would be the fact that rookie cards and things like that come out that players have not played a day in their life. Um, they're more expensive cards than Hall of Famers. That bothers me big time.
Nice.
I get the hype, but and I know it's because of rarity and limited print run and all this other stuff. The cards are 10 times better than just a plain rookie card of Don Mattingly 1984 Donruss. You know, um, but that stuff, that bothers me. A guy that's a Hall of Famer, his rookie card is $150 or whatever. PSA 10's a different, PSA graded cards are different stories. But yeah, those guys coming out of the block and they haven't even played, and they're three times as much as a Hall of Famer. That bothers me.
Right. You're the first one to say something about that too, and I think that's great. It is kind of shocking. I was having that revelation myself. I was other than like Patrick Waugh, who I think most people know or have heard of, even though they don't watch hockey. His cards are always going to be expensive, but man, when you're picking up these cards and you're like, well, that guy has only played a year, but the hype is so high, his rookie card is like $80. But this guy, he's got like 350 wins, like third all time, $10. It just doesn't make any sense, but It's the what have you done for me lately? Look at the new shiny thing mentality,
Yeah,
and that's what collecting is about now, and that's what's made it so popular. But I agree with you on that. It would be nice to see some more sensible prices, and it's too bad Beckett doesn't keep up with all the '90s and '80s and all that stuff better, because I think they could maybe balance some people out,
right,
or at
right,
least give us the idea that they are. But
right.
well, you mentioned some 101s and stuff that you are just kind of out of your range. If there wasn't, if money wasn't an issue, if there wasn't such thing as a budget for one card that you could buy, what would that one card be?
So I don't know how familiar you are with Cal's minor league cards, but
Only from what Will and Andy have told me, so I have just a little bit of knowledge, not much though.
okay. So the this Red Wing card that I showed, there is another 81 Red Wing card which I have, but there are two prior to that are 1980 cards, and they're from the Charlotte Orioles, the double A affiliation, and one is a blue version and one is an orange version. Now the blue version, they were given away to kids under 14, I think, back in 1980 during one of the games. And the attendance was so poor at these games that I think there was like 1,400 sets or something made, and more than half of them ended up in shopping carts at the end of the game because there was nobody at the game, and they ended up in dumpsters.
Oh,
And that was the blue version. There was an orange version, which is the same exact picture, except that the card is orange versus blue.
right.
And those were like a police set. And they were more, supposedly, they're more rare. And I believe they are because you don't see a whole lot of the orange ones ever come up for sale. Um, so it would be the orange police version is the card that I would want to get. The blue one, the blue one is probably within range at some point because it's about 2,500 bucks.
Oh man.
But the orange version, there's a PSA 2 on eBay for 6 or 7 thousand
Jeez.
for a PSA 2.
Wow. Well,
So
isn't there a lot of reprints of that, like falsified copies of that card that are out
yeah,
there floating around?
yeah, they're counterfeited pretty. There's a lot of counterfeits out there, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also actual just reprints. Somebody got a hold of something or made a reprint of it. People are
Mm.
selling them on eBay, both the blue and the orange, for a couple of bucks a piece.
Jeez.
And they're not trying to pass them along as real cards. They're just selling them as reprints. So if I really wanted it, I guess I could buy the reprint for
You
two
could
bucks.
print a picture of it yourself.
Right.
Gotcha. Well, that's cool. I mean, Cal offers that unique, the unique collecting aspect of having all these rare minor league cards. I think nowadays, Topps does a minor league set, and you can get those for pretty cheap. Hockey does the same thing with some of their upper deck stuff. So you're never going to see that again. But it's so cool that those cards. I mean, again, there's so much history with Cal, and you saw Will show off that one. What was it? That gold domed card from like a car dealership or something. I mean, how
Yeah.
wild! I mean, nobody has cars like that out there except Cal. So it's really cool to see that.
I've actually
Uh,
seen that card on eBay before.
yeah,
And like Will said, it comes with, I believe it was Frank. I think it was Frank Robinson was also one of the cards. Um,
really.
but they don't show up very often. But I have seen it on eBay before, and I want to say, it's a couple $100. Like either 199 or 299 for the Ripken.
Wow.
And then I thought I saw at one point, I thought there was the 3 card set for sale. Somebody had a while back, and that was probably $500 or $600.
Yeah, having him as a whole set would be a
Yeah,
pretty sweet thing for you.
but
But yeah,
it's like Will said though. There's not a I don't know what the number. I can't remember what the number was on the back of the card he showed.
Something like
But
10,000 or something, wasn't it?
yeah, there's no way there's 10,000 of them. I mean,
Oh,
I would be my guess would be less than 100.
okay. Interesting. They must have had the same thing happen. They printed them all, but nobody ever came and got them. So they're like, all right, well, see ya. I guess we'll
Yeah,
throw them all away. Use them for fire starters, which is just crazy to think. But
yeah,
well, Chuck, it's been a lot of fun to be able to talk to you because I feel like every time you and I chat, whether it's before a podcast or just chatting for fun, I'm always I'm always appreciative of the fact that there's people out there who are very friendly and also really focused on just collecting one player and always trying to help each other out. I think those are all things that you bring to the table, and also your love for Pacific. I think that is a strong bond that we have. But I hope people watching this can at least take a little bit away that there's plenty to stay focused on if you're able to stay patient and collect one player and wait for those big cards to come up. Not a lot of people can do that anymore, man. I think everybody's so like Brent in the very first interview talked about being on Kyle Lewis and then wanting to get Cruz and then wanting to get Bauer, and it's just so easy to be jumping around, and you've been able to stand pat with your one player. So I hope someday that you do like a video and just show off the whole collection sometime. I know I've only seen like a fraction of it in a video, but when you were posting a card today, I was just like, wow, he's got that Pacific card and that Pacific card, and it's pretty impressive. So yeah, you should be real proud of your collection, man. It's come a long way. How much is it at right now? Do you know how many individual Ripken cards you have?
I just know it's over 5,000.
Okay.
I don't know exactly.
That's impressive, man.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, for the super collector page that you're on, you'll have to one day you and your wife will have to sit down, and if we ever get quarantined again or something happens, you should just sit down and just start counting and see how many's there.
Yeah, one of these days I might get around to counting them out and seeing what I got.
I'll just have to come visit, and we'll just have to spend the night counting them all. That'd be fun.
Yeah, sure, I'm game.
That'd be great. That would be so much fun to
It
look
might
through
take,
other
it
collections.
might take more than a night though.
Probably would, wouldn't it? It probably would. About 6 or 7 pizzas and
Yeah,
lots of soda. But
yeah.
awesome. Well, hey, to end the interview, Chuck, if you were to summarize, this interview, this experience, and everything, what word would you use to summarize that?
I would say grateful.
Nice, awesome. I think that's a perfect word to use for this year too, because we have a lot of things to be grateful for
Yeah.
when it comes to collecting. And thanks for mentioning that too at the beginning. I don't think many people have said that, but it's something we should all keep in mind because there's been a lot of amazing things that have happened. Just the other day, poor Tyler, he was like, I lost this card. I'm taking a break. I'm like, dude, don't do that. Like, go step back, turn around and look at your display, just
Yep.
like we all do. Whenever we lose a card, I always go, I'm going to go look at what I do have. And then it reminds me, like, okay, look at everything I didn't lose out on. So,
I just messaged him the other night about a McGuire Precious Metals that hit,
yeah.
and he said he already got one from Alan.
Yep. No,
So
he did.
I think it was PSA 9.
Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's awesome how you're always looking out for other collectors, and ever since you joined the 90s group, it's been nice to have somebody to bounce things off of. I know I've asked you countless times when I was collecting A-Rod, hey, where's a good price for this? And how hard was it to find your Ripken? And, it's always nice to bounce it off somebody who is a great resource. So thanks for being that person for sure. Always enjoy that.
I appreciate the opportunity to help out and give a little bit of a hand where I can. I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to the whole entire hobby, but I do have a good understanding. But I can just like you said, give from experience best I can. So.
Right. Well, you've seen it from when it was at its peak in the 90s to the dropping to the like absolute bottom of the barrel to coming out being the more expensive and more popular than it's ever been. This era of baseball cards. So
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you for sticking with it the whole time, man. But Chuck, thanks again for coming on. Really glad I was able to get you on here before the series wrapped up, and definitely look forward to doing a Pacific themed bracket eventually once we come back. So
that's what we're waiting for, right?
That's right, man. That's right. When I get Mike Kramer on here, you're part of that interview, no doubt.
All right, I'll hold you to that.
Don't you worry. Don't you worry. I would love for that to happen. Well, thanks. We didn't have too many people commenting. I know we had a lot of people watching, but Four Leaf Cards and Nate, of course, and the Schmidt Collector. Thanks for popping in, and everybody else that watched this. Sure appreciate it. And tomorrow, come back at around the same time. I think 3 o'clock my time is when we're going to do it, but 2 or 3. But Alan Chen is going to be on here. He'll be the final guest of this series. He's going to be a really interesting interview because he's the complete opposite from Chuck. He likes Barry Bonds, but he has been collecting all over the board as far as the 90s go, and he's going to have a lot of fun and interesting stories to share, as well as the how important it is to not miss out on the most important card that you want and the repercussions of that. So I know, Chuck, you're excited to hear that whole story, and I am too. So we'll catch you guys all tomorrow, and happy holidays. Have a great night.
Thanks, Matt. Take care, everybody.